As the world gets smaller, an important tool in an investor's arsenal is a good grasp of how global events affect our economy. And for that, we went all the way to Hong Kong to speak with the Chief Economist for Asia ex-Japan of Daiwa Securities Limited, Mr. Kevin Lai.
Well, I think for 2020, the main focus is still with this trade war between US and China. Although there was a kind of a phase one interim trade deal between US and China last week, the US is not going to raise new tariffs on China.
As I understand it, the Chinese have agreed to, buy more of the American goods. So that's a positive thing, right?
Positive, but then you have to ask if China can deliver.
Okay.
Because the bar is very high, talking about $200 billions more in terms of purchase of US goods and services in about 2 years. Especially in the second year, we talk about $123 billion. China will have to cut back or stop buying anything from countries like Canada, Australia, Brazil, and even in buy a lot less from the Philippines, for example. Philippines also, I believe, also exports a lot of agricultural goods to China. And I honestly think that even under this phase one deal, both countries are headed for a decoupling. You will see more US companies, more multinationals to leave China. As a result, the US will be trading a lot less with China, a lot more with these new markets. And exactly because there is this decoupling assumption, then the US tariffs are necessary. They will serve as a tool to facilitate, to make sure this decoupling to happen.
While the Phase 1 deal has shown the market some relief, we still expect US tariffs to remain. The economies of US and China will continue to drift apart in a process called decoupling. While the US election is coming up, here are his thoughts.
Okay, other things being equal, I would say Trump will win. Okay, although right now he has an impeachment inquiry trial. Actually, he's going into the trial process. I don't know what may happen. Looks like it's not easy to impeach him even now. So I think the Trump phase one deal will help Trump win. China will help Trump win, but then I expect Trump's second term to be much tougher on China.
So that being said, do you think that the phase 2 deal is possible?
No. The main issue is with China, because China is not ready. Because with a full trade deal, that means China will have to embrace market capitalism. China strongly believes in its own model. The model is based on what we call a state capitalism. If China agrees to embracing market forces, it will be very difficult for the Communist Party to rule the country.
Looks like we're gonna see another 4 years of Mr. Trump as president. And even so, a Phase 2 deal may not be possible due to the inherent differences between the US and China.
How does this affect the Chinese economy then?
Chinese economy will continue to struggle. Trade war certainly has added a lot more pressure. And then there are also many other domestic problems in China. China just has too much debt. And the debt burden is killing the economy.
Given your discussion of the debt levels in China, how likely is a US level crisis?
You're not going to see a financial crisis in China because obviously that will not be allowed to happen. So the government will make sure that they have enough tools, they have enough controls. The only way to resolve that is to allow the debt ratio to keep going up. And that has been the solution, really, the recipe to avoid a financial crisis over the last 5-10 years. Right? The reality is that whenever the country is close to a credit crisis, then the central bank government will step in to provide, to offer the money. Okay, and but then I don't know how long they can keep that going. The next war will not be just about trade, but will be mostly about trade and financials. Yeah, the financial war or the currency war, for example. I think there's a growing opinion in the U.S. that China should be restricted from getting the dollars. Now, exactly because China has borrowed a lot of US dollars. I'm talking about not only the government, but many SOEs, private Chinese companies, Hong Kong companies, they have borrowed a lot of dollars, converted into Chinese yuan, invested in China. And if we see the yuan keeps going down, then a lot of this debt will not be repaid. It makes perfect sense for US to squeeze China on that end even more. If the US does anything that will trigger further Chinese yuan depreciation, then it will takes China closer to at least an external financial crisis, dollar debt crisis, for example. Okay. Remember, in the summer of 2015, there was also there was a mini financial crisis, currency crisis, not financial crisis, in China, right? That caused a huge shock to the markets. And China, as a result, lost $1 trillion reserves in about a year. Strong dollar policy triggered a lot of pressure on money flows, capital flows in China. And after 2016-17, again, the solution for China was to continue to borrow more dollars. As long as China can borrow dollars, then it can still generate sufficient inflows, artificial inflows, although these inflows are driven by debt, so that the yuan can be just fine. But then if China cannot borrow enough in the next few years, China will have to borrow a lot more, especially to deliver that $200 billion commitment. They will have to borrow even more.
The impossibility of the complete resolution of the trade war, demographic issues, the high levels of debt in the private and public sector will indeed cause a slowdown in the Chinese economy. What we have to be concerned about is the prospect of an even greater slowdown due to a different kind of war, like a currency war, where a stronger dollar can inflict more damage to the Chinese economy.
I guess we can still take some relief from the fact that the Fed is not going to tighten anytime soon. At least this year, I think Fed's policy should be on hold. Outside China, I don't think we are going to see any problems with capital flows or currency pressure, like what we saw back in 2015 or 2013, etc., or even much earlier before. So, and I would argue that the rest of Asia should be doing fine in this trade war. If we say this decoupling to continue to be the main trend, in the next 5 to 10 years. And obviously, I think the rest of Asia will be taking over a lot of market share from China. Then the U.S. cannot be on its own. U.S. we always have to find another partner in global trade. And that the biggest partner has been China in the last 30 years, or at least 20 years. If we started from the WTO, then if China is on its way out, then it has to be somebody, somebody has to take over. So I mentioned India, ASEAN, and some other countries, smaller countries like Taiwan will take over the entire supply chain. Obviously, ASEAN is closer to the U.S. in strategic terms. You cannot disagree with that. And ASEAN also has better demographics. ASEAN also has a growing middle class, and that is very vibrant. So ASEAN itself can be a huge regional bloc and can create enough demand on its own.
While the US-China trade war has de-escalated, the increasing distance between these economies will cause a dramatic shift in regional economics. It may cause some volatility in the short term, but it also presents an opportunity for strong domestic markets like ASEAN, including the Philippines.